Hello everyone, welcome back to the another session in Principles of Programming Languages. We'll continue to learn about 5th unit. The next topic of 5th unit is what? Comparison of functional programming languages over imperative programming languages. And this question or this topic is covered in previous question papers for 2 marks. And for some question papers you will find this question as a long question, some part of the question. So usually a question consists of part A and part B, right? So you can expect this question as one of the long question. Right, now let's understand the comparison in between functional and imperative. In 5 parameters we just do it. The 5 are what? The syntax of imperative is different from functional. So the comparisons will be syntax wise we'll compare, syntax of imperative, syntax of functional language, and semantic wise also we'll compare. The semantic what we were finding the instruction of imperative language and the semantic what we were writing in the functional programming language. So syntax wise we'll compare, semantic wise we'll compare, and also we'll compare execution efficiency wise. And this point you have to understand, when I say a language belongs to functional programming language, you should not say it is blindly that it uses interpreter. Yes, it is not true that all functional programming languages will use only interpreter, and that is also not true all the languages will use only compiler in the case of imperative. So as the days are becoming more crucial to use your computer technology, yes, there are languages which use interpreters and which was standard for even imperative. So when I say something, a language is said to be imperative is what? It is not the way it uses compiler or interpreter, but it is the way how it is using the structure of the program. Done? If a language is said to be Von Neumann architecture, as simple as imperative is what? The language which runs through commands, the language which takes instructions to execute. So that language is what? Imperative. The general meaning of imperative is what? Command. If a language is running or if a program is running with a command, we say it is imperative language. The language which doesn't need a command, we say it is functional or object or something, scripting. We say it is. So imperative is what? We have some restrictions, we have some limitations, so that languages will comes under imperative. It is never be true that all the languages of imperative will use only compiler, all the languages of functional programming will use only interpreter. This is not true. There are languages which are under functional programming languages and which uses compiler. Right. The third parameter with what we'll compare is execution. So the way how it executes the instruction, that is one of the thing. And the second thing is what? Fast. Whether imperative languages will execute fast or imperative will execute fast. So this is what execution speed we say. So execution basically interpreter or compiler, that topic it covers here. Fast is what? Though it is interpreter, it may be fast. Though it is compiler, it may be fast. So that part also we'll cover. And also we cover about some control statements, what it uses if it is imperative, and what control statements we'll use if it is a functional. So these are what the comparing parameters. Right, now we'll get into the video to understand more about comparisons. Functional languages can have a very simple syntactic unit or structure, the list structure of Lisp, which is used for both code and data. When I say syntax, now let's understand, as far as Lisp data structure or else Lisp programming is considered, if I wanted to add 2 numbers, as simple as I have taken plus 5 comma 3 or plus 5 3. So we treated plus as a function name and 5 comma 3 are parameters. That's what we were understood from the plus 5 comma 3. If I wanted to do the same operation using an imperative language, it is for sure the syntax won't be this much easy. Right? We were come across with many imperative languages. Let's take example of C. so user-friendly language, so simple language, so easy to understand. We give all these taglines to C. If you compare the syntax of C versus syntax of Lisp, which is easier? Obviously Lisp is easier because there is no type of the languages, there is no parameter declaration, there is no implicit, explicit declaration, there is no strategy of local variable, global variable. All these things are not needed in the functional programming languages. Now that's what we wrote here. Functional languages can have a very simple syntactic structure compared to compared to imperative languages. The syntax of the imperative languages is much more complex. Why the reason it is much more complex? Because if I am introducing a variable in the imperative language, I should tell, as a user I should tell to which data type it is belongs, the value of that variable, the scope of the variable, the lifetime of the variable, all the things I have to discuss in the program. So that's what the syntactical structure of a variable, the syntactical structure of a imperative language is little more complex if you compare with the Lisp programming language or else the functional programming language. And the semantic of functional languages is also simpler that of the imperative languages. Yes, it is also true. If I write a function name in the Lisp, let's say that I wanted to calculate some square root of a number, then we will be writing square root of x is equal to some x into x we were writing. As simple as, I don't have any declaration part to declare in the functional programming languages. I don't have any calling statement. I don't have any separate block to define the what function it performs. Whereas, all these three things are needed in the imperative languages. So, the static semantic, even it is required, little more complex. The complexity is what? I have to declare this function in the imperative. And I should pass the value of this using parameter passing method. I should define the function of what it performs. So those are three syntactical structures what has to be included in the imperative languages. That's what it is more complex. Or else the functional programming semantical structure is simpler than imperative. And execution efficiency, the third parameter, execution efficiency is another basis for comparison. When functional programs are interpreted, they are of course much slower than their compiled imperative counterparts. Recently, you can find this change with the functional programming languages that even functional programming languages were having compilers. So, as the execution parameter wise, compilers are more faster, correct? Because compiler is what? It transfers or it converts the whole program into machine code. So, compilation will be a quick process in the compiler. Interpreter, it does the same task for each and every instruction what is written into the program. So, that's what in execution wise, compiler will be executing fast, fine. And the interpreter wise, it executes slowly. But which one is the speed up things? Compiler will be doing it as slowly because it has to take whole code to get the machine code. Interpreter will do fast because it is having only one instruction. Right now, so another source of the difference in execution efficiency between functional programming and imperative programs is the fact that imperative languages were designed to run efficiently on Von Neumann architecture computers, while the design of functional languages is based on mathematical functions. This is what the other difference you can say. The first difference is syntax, second is semantic, third is execution efficiency, fourth is structure. So, all imperative programming languages were designed to execute on Von Neumann architecture. All functional programming languages were designed to be executed using mathematical functions. And programs in functional languages are naturally divided into functions. In a pure functional language, these functions are independent in the sense that they do not create side effects and their operations do not depend on any non-local or global variables. Therefore, it is much easier to determine which of them can be concurrently executed. This is the other difference what you can consider comparison over functional to imperative. So these are what the fundamental difference what you can notice. The other difference is functional languages have a potential advantage in readability. In many imperative programs, the details of dealing with variables, the logic of the program. Now look at this. If it is an imperative language, as simple as it is, if it is an imperative language, I should talk about the variable declaration, what we were discussed in the earlier things, that semantic functions we were seen, right? So the same difference you can see over here. If it is an imperative language, I have to write this much of code to make it is understandable to the user. Without loss of readability to the user, we'll make the same structure in single statement. Did you understand? This is what imperative and this is what functional programming language. Meaning is not lost. Will improve the readability skill even. The way how you will get readability factor over here in the imperative, higher than that you will get over here. And you will be feel that it is what simple if you compare with this imperative language code. Even the function definitions also simpler when you compare imperative structure with the functional structure. So here it is, I should talk about what is the parameter, what I am passing, and the variable what it is required inside of the function, and the counterpart loop what it is required and how it will get varied from one value to the other value, and I should return the value, I have to write even the expression. The same thing will get reflect in here. Now let's look at, in Haskell the function could be some cubes is the function name, n is the parameter, and this is what it calculates the value, as simple as. So that's what functional programming languages will be more simpler if you compare with the imperative programming languages. So that's it. This is about comparison of functional to imperative. Thank you all.